The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one, the price of Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin is down to $84,511. That's $1 for 1,183 Satoshis on the wrong side of the 1,000 Satoshi barrier. The recent high for Bitcoin in the last 24 hours was 85,330 with a low of 78,617. Volume was 4,126. Issue 1. Bitcoin down 25% from all-time high as crypto rout worsens. Bitcoin hit a high on January 20th, the day of Trump's inauguration, and the decline is now a part of widespread sell-off in digital assets. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the most important issue to everyone? Let me get the Magic 8 Ball ready. The price, the price, the price, and of course, the price.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. Obviously, those of us who've been in Bitcoin for a while realizes that this is what Bitcoin does from time to time. In many respects, it does seem to be a classic case of buy the rumor, sell the news, as in everyone was really hyped about Donald Trump being the crypto president. But of course, the moment he's inaugurated, everyone's been waiting with bated breath for all those executive orders that he signs, for one of them to include Bitcoin. And of course, that's been dramatically absent from proceedings. So although there's a lot of stuff going on, I mean, obviously we'll come and talk about it later. There are a lot of meetings with, various officials about crypto, but they're mainly focused on stablecoins, which of course, is not great for Bitcoin in terms of, the regulatory environment. So very disappointing, really. And I suppose those who are at the forefront of these things, especially a number of the businesses and the ETFs and the financial managers, they keep a careful eye on these things. And so, as time goes by and a lack of evidence starts to appear of, these things not taking place, people start to get spooked. And of course, obviously all of these institutions had a big part to play in the price rising. But of course, the moment they get disillusioned, they have a big part to play in the price coming down as well. And so, a number of months ago, I was talking about exactly this scenario. So it doesn't surprise me. But it'll be interesting to see what happens.
It is true they haven't gotten much for their money so far. They got an executive order announcing a working group for crypto, a working group for the crypto asset reserve, right? Not the Bitcoin asset reserve. Very quickly, how those goalposts move, especially as the president made himself a meme coin just days before the inauguration, then made a similar copy for his wife, the first lady. They did get Ross Ulbricht freed, but that's a small thing to pay when these, not just the Bitcoin conditions, but the 25% tariffs have also destroyed the market. There's an expectation that the economy is going to be raised, the prices are going to be raised, trade is going to slow down, as well as international relations being hampered and so forth by the isolationist president and the things that they've chosen and announced so far. There is still a little bit of hope, if you want to go there, that the 25% tariffs won't happen, that they'll give him something similar that we saw with Canada and Mexico, where they were able to give him something that they'd already given him and get the tariffs canceled. But then again, it comes back on the thing again. And it's hilarious. I was just reading a book about practically the 1900s about Teddy Roosevelt and tariffs, and what a disaster it was. Every single thing, the new group comes in and wants to lower tariffs, because lowering tariffs lowers prices, increases trade, so you sell more widgets, so people can buy more widgets, so they're happier. People can sell more widgets, so they're happier. People can make more widgets and be happier. Instead, we're going the other direction here, constricting the economy which leads to a pullback on risk assets. Bitcoin still seen as a risk asset. Gold somehow getting through this, I think. But in general, the stock market's down, Bitcoin's down, everything's down, regardless of your libertarian philosophies and your belief that Bitcoin is radically different from these markets. For we have been linked up to these markets now for quite some time, whether we want it or not. As it says on Coinbase, Bitcoin sell-off could be a textbook breakout and retest play, says Omkar Godbol, and now a great financial advisor and analyst over there at Coinbase. As he says here, you see how Bitcoin goes down suddenly. Everyone who got into the market recently, all the shorts, all the longs, all knocked out here. And then it hits a point right here. He's got the former retest at 73,757. Then it's possible that it bounces to new heights. Other people on Twitter have said it still could go 250 in 6 months. There's still general macro belief, but once again, just not now. So as long as you don't have to sell now, you're fine. Let's move on towards the exit question, because what else can we say about the price and the political situation? We'll talk more about the stable coins later, like Victoria said. Predicting against the Magic 8 Ball, who I believe was pessimistic last week. I believe he said don't count on it. So yes, if you were selling by the 8 Ball, you should have sold everything. You could have had it, could have been there. Victoria, will the price be higher or lower this time next week? Have we hit the bottom yet?
I highly doubt we've hit the bottom yet. I mean, if you look back in history, often there's a few red candles when you have a dramatic one. It's going to take a while for everyone to kind of restabilize their confidence. So yeah, I'll say it's going lower next week.
Well, let us know what you guys think in the chat, if you think it's going to be higher or lower. Now I'll go ahead and ask the Magic 8 Ball, will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? My reply is no. My reply is no. The ball is pessimistic. I remain optimistic. I like Bitcoin. As with many of the hodlers, these kind of events happen all of a sudden. You're kind of knocked over it by it, but your strategy is hodl. Your strategy is long-term. You're not selling now. You're selling in 5 years. You don't know what the price is going to be in 5 years. You don't want to know what it's going to be in 6 months. And we'll just have to wait and see. Of course, every once in a while, you got to sell for some money. As Schrodinger said in the chat, damn that ball. Yes, the ball is very wise, and we could all do better listening to the Magic 8 Ball. Moving on to issue 2. Musk and Fort Knox. Their trip is all about Bitcoin. More than a stunt, the Fort Knox visit might be a chance for the president to change the price of gold and dump the price hike into cryptocurrency. I don't know if you guys have seen this recently, but the president has been saying, almost like a kid getting ready to go on a field trip, that me and my pal Elon are going to Fort Knox and we're going to see the gold and we're going to see if it's there. There seems to be no plan to weigh the gold or test the gold or any kind of strategic analysis of the gold, but it would be an amazing thing to even have a video camera into Fort Knox. Thomas Hunt, what do you think about Trump and Elon's plan to go see the gold? Well, obviously, if there's no gold, this is good for Bitcoin. The United States default, the world collapses, everything flies apart, and Trump and Elon are there like Geraldo Rivera looking at Al Capone's safe, just looking around. It's empty. There's nothing. They took it all. I think that's very unlikely. Even if they did take the gold and we want to go conspiracy, they owed it to China or they owed it to whoever it is, they would have left behind painted bars that look like gold. So I don't think that Trump and Elon's field trip will yield very much. It would be fascinating to audit the gold. It would be fascinating to audit the insides of the gold at a certain point, at a random level, just out of pure curiosity, not having any specific conspiratorial knowledge. The only thing I know is we haven't audited Fort Knox during my lifetime, and it's been a really long time. And there's no reason not to audit it, just like the vault in the Bellagio in Ocean's 11. They have that video camera on the vault at all times, so you can see the money's there. As a citizen, I should be able to see the gold's there. So we have a rare agreement, I think, here between myself and Trump. I don't like to admit that. Victoria Jones, what about the plan? It's an Indiana Jones movie. Trump and Elon go to Fort Knox.
I mean, well, I'll give Trump the fact that he really knows how to play to an audience. I mean, clearly he's very in tune with what the issues are on the ground. And obviously, Fort Knox not having any gold there has been a subject of conversation for a long time. Because as you say, it's been over 50 years ever since Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. There hasn't been a proper audit. I mean, you've had various people pop in. I think last time Mnuchin went in to look at the gold, he came out saying gold is safe, supposedly implying that he'd seen
You
that
sure
we
he
still
didn't
had.
say Safu? Gold is Safu.
No, he didn't say that. But but obviously implying to everyone that everything was fine. But I mean, we all know how manipulated the financial markets are. So yeah, I mean, most people don't believe that what they're telling us is true. There are plenty of ways in which you could hide it. Of course, Trump may well have his own agenda, which I think the agenda in this article was a little bit far-fetched. I'm not sure that they would revalue gold in order to buy Bitcoin. I don't believe that for a second. But, if they were to revalue gold, for example, that could certainly, wreak some havoc. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm watching with bated breath.
Well, and I just hope they do the classic mistake of filming it and doing it live, because it's a long time and it's even really before my age. But everyone can look it up. There's a hilarious video. Geraldo Rivera, famous gossip type journalist, got a hold of Al Capone's vault and he hypes it up for 20 minutes. He's like, "No one's ever opened this vault, and this is a vault he owned at the height of his criminal career. There could be Vera bonds, dollars, cigars, guns, knives, pictures of women, everything, right? This is Al Capone's vault." And on TV live, he opens it and it's empty. There's nothing in the vault. So we'd be so lucky for them to take him down there, for it to be empty, or for it to be a cardboard cutout, or anything like that. But I just think it's very unlikely. It's another kind of distraction story, unfortunately. As much as it's a libertarian fantasy to audit the vault and even just to like have a camera on it as a citizen, to be curious, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to restart gold coinage. You're not going to be able to trade your $20 bill in for $20 worth of gold, whatever that may be. We're not going back to that. And we've been through this before. Whether we like it or not, we're in this growth economy, the capitalist growth economy, and it has to grow or the businesses fail and they go out of business, and we have to get new resources and we have to expand. And in a way, this has kind of led to our entrepreneurial spirit, which until recently had Elon riding government subsidies and going to Mars. And it was pretty straightforward, but apparently he's going to wreck Earth first and as well. So we'll see how that goes. What about Fort Knox? Exit question, Victoria Jones. Will there be gold? Yes or no?
I think it will look like there's gold, whether it's real or not.
Oh,
It's a whole different ball
conspiracy
game.
on conspiracy. Oh. And Trump knows gold too. He's got a golden toilet. His airplane is made of gold. He's a very gold person. So yeah, send the right person. They'd send the right person. So, but even Trump, you think would want some kind of a chemical audit, some kind of a random audit, as well as taking them apart. If they're in like giant pyramids of gold, it could be like a lead structure with gold on the outside. I mean, I don't know how far they expect him to dip into this, especially given the weight of these gold bars. Maybe he and Elon can work together to lift one.
One of the interesting facts that not many people know is that underneath the World Trade Center, when the towers collapsed, was a load of bank vaults, and all of that gold is unaccounted for, and no one knows where it went. After they left. So there's all sorts of movements of gold that happen underneath the radar. Obviously, it turns out that event actually turned out to be the biggest bank heist ever due to the disappearing bullion, and no one knows where it is as yet. So, yeah, I wouldn't trust anything anyone says about what's in the gold votes, especially without any evidence.
And to say nothing of the disappearing money at the Pentagon the day before. It was a day for heists. But like Schrodinger's Destiny says in the chat, maybe he's secretly planning a heist on Fort Knox, and it's all just a heist movie, and Trump and Elon are the George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and Ocean's 11 is our country. Maybe, just maybe. Well, let's keep moving. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com, where we've got 4,169 videos you could check out, and more every day at worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 3, Bybit. And we're just going to kind of cover this. So the Bybit exploiter, the North Korean Lazarus group, has indeed attempted to launder some of the funds through pump.fun. They sent Sol to this address, launched a token, and generated $26 million in trading volume. Additionally, the owner or CEO of Bybit, Ben Zhao, is on the warpath, saying that they are at war against Lazarus, attempting to track down the North Korean hackers and stop them from hacking other exchanges. They want to help people. If you can help them freeze the money, there's a 5% bounty. They have a team working on this. And he says, let the hunting season begin. Additionally, there are reports on how the hack was carried out. Bybit was not compromised. The compromise was safe servers. According to this, they hot swapped the Gnosis safe UI with JS code that only targeted Bybit's cold wallet. Independently confirmed by Wayback Machine snapshots, Lazarus Group is on another level. Apparently, as soon as Bybit attacked to the safe servers, the code was already there, just waiting for them. There's more details here on the internet. Let's go to Thomas Hunt. What do you think about the Bybit hack and the information? Well, first of all, I think it's super excited. They took some of the funds through pump.fun. I speculated that could be a fun way for them to launder the money, and I'm certainly not involved, but that's fun. I think that was a fun story. So there's $26 million. All right, good job. I think it's kind of exciting and hacker movie-esque for this CEO guy to be out there saying, let's hunt the Lazarus Group. And the rest of us clearly know that the Lazarus Group seems to be a state-sponsored North Korean cyber terrorist group. So we know where they are. We don't need to hunt them. We found them. But I don't know what they think they're going to do or what they're going to do to stop these guys. I assume North Korea is taking care of them, and that's probably a direct one-to-one relationship. And I'll bet North Korea also doesn't let them go. So it can't be that great for them. But they do seem to be great hackers. Again, Victoria and I were talking before, and we don't really understand the details of what's going on here, but it does seem like similar to some of the other hacks where an external party was signing the keys for Bitfinex. An external party, the Safe Network, was involved in Bybit security. The external party was hacked. When Bybit connected to the external party, the code was already there waiting for them. And that led to this massive $1.5 billion theft of Ethereum, which could also be crashing the market right now. This general idea of the hack, the actual money itself moving through the market. Do you want to be the one that has a t-shirt I sold because the North Korean hackers were laundering their money through the market and it scared me? T-shirt. It could be good. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the North Korean hack and the fascinating technical details about the Bybit hack, which are available to anyone on the internet?
Yeah, it's quite frightening, really, especially for those of us who aren't technical, who are involved in the cryptocurrency space. I'm quite knowledgeable. I've obviously been in this space for a while. I know lots of people who are software developers, and I was reading the detail of some of these articles and some of these tweets, and most of it was going over my head. Had no idea what they were talking about, but it does seem that there was some kind of third-party wallet software that they were relying on, and that was what was compromised. In fact, it was targeted very specifically for this exchange, which is quite worrying. I mean, for us mere mortals, hopefully it's more reassuring that if they're going to go to the effort of targeting anyone, they're going for the big wallets. But in many respects, it could be a trial run for, if they can do this to a big exchange, could they do it to anyone? Presumably they'd go for a big exchange because the moment they did it to an individual and the alarm was raised, someone's going to come in and find a way to mitigate whatever it was that they exploited in order to do the hack. And obviously, if if that means they only get the chance to do it once, then they need to make sure that, their bounty is as big as possible. But this is the kind of thing that mere mortals tend to be afraid of, because cryptocurrency is new. We're relying on software technology, which is still relatively new. I mean, it only really evolved in the 60s. Um, so yeah, 99.9% of the time it's completely reliable, but obviously these things happen, and it's a big warning to the rest of the community to try and get on top of these problems sooner rather than later. But of course, if they do target a big exchange, they're affecting all of their customers. And of course, something like this really affects confidence in the market. And so, yeah, I agree. Now that Trump's been inaugurated and there's been a lack of definitive action towards Bitcoin, and we've also had this hack, both of those situations could be contributing to the dump in the market.
It is interesting where the hack comes down to. If your account gets hacked, if your password gets leaked, or maybe you go through a phishing email that takes you to a fake Coinbase, that's your fault. That's your fault. You lose all your money. This hack hit the Bybit cold wallet, so it's actually them holding the money. And I don't know how they did it. Loans or some kind of business deals, or perhaps insurance. They say they already have the Ethereum back. So the company has already recouped the funds. Bybit, the company, is not in any danger from this. And actually, as the way the market rolled, they might have gotten that Ethereum at a cheaper price. Not to say that they had a hand in this, or they helped themselves get hacked, or they had reason that it was beneficial to them to get hacked for this. I don't know anything about that. But again, it is interesting, as I said in the intro, to have them face off against what we know to be a nation state group. So we have reached kind of that cypherpunk era described in the book Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, where he said, corporations are the same as governments. And you could work and live at KFC, or you could work and live at the United States and be a Fed. In the same way, these guys who work and live at Lazarus Group have gone head to head with whatever Bybit and the rest of the Bitcoin industry can get together, hacker-wise, money-wise, bounty-wise, government-wise. And we'll see what happens with the rest of this. It's an incredible sum that they've taken down at $1.5 billion. Of course, adjusting now with the market, probably $1.2 billion. Kind of shot themselves in the foot there a little bit. But still an incredibly huge hack. But maybe one of those hacks where it's just so big that it follows you around like a ball and chain. Razzle Khan trading the money for PlayStation 2s and boxes of Tide or whatever, Walmart gift cards. You're never going to be able to launder $1 billion through Walmart gift cards. Even under the best of all scenarios, you're never going to be able to do that. So we'll continue watching the story. Moving on to issue 4. It's good that we have Victoria and I here for this. I think we're going to be in great agreement here. Michael Saylor has advised the SEC, saying Bitcoin is not a digital currency. In a meeting with the crypto task force, Saylor proposed a regulatory framework that mainly benefits Michael Saylor. Written by Lola. Shout out to Lola at The Rage, a friend of the show. As she says here, Michael Saylor, Bitcoin is not digital currency. I know it's shocking to everyone watching this show who thought they had gotten involved in the cryptocurrency revolution, thought they had a thing here that you could pay people with. You might have even been paid with it. In the past, you might have sent a donation. You might have had a donation sent to you. But you were wrong. It's not a currency. You were sent digital gold. It just so happens that digital gold has a mechanism now where you can send it, receive it for almost no cost, especially even less cost if you use the Lightning Network. So it's very strange. Again, we've been talking about this for a long time, Victoria and I. Michael Saylor's not our friend. He's interested in benefiting himself. He's made this brilliant move where he's got this company corporate structure where he can borrow more money and buy more Bitcoin. If I could do it, I would do it. If you could do it, you would do it. But we're not smart like him. We don't have this corporate structure that lets us seemingly borrow endless amounts of money to buy endless amounts of Bitcoin and then pats us on the back for it like we're geniuses. And we're talking like late coming to Bitcoin here, like not. And he had this corporate structure early. He could have done this in 2010 or 2011. Victoria, what do you think about Michael Saylor? Bitcoin is not digital currency. Obviously, I disagree with him, but it doesn't much matter. You're muted.
Sorry, getting carried away there. Just trying to look at the article at the same time as I'm talking to you. Um, yeah, I mean, I thought the article had a great headline. I mean, basically, uh, Michael Saylor proposed a regulatory framework that mainly benefits Michael Saylor. Um, to be fair to Michael Saylor, though, which is unexpected thing for me to say. One of the points he makes in the article, I'm just trying to find it so that I can quote it because I thought that this was an important point. So he said that he pointed out that Bitcoin is an asset without an issuer, whereas other digital currencies are an asset with an issuer. And so basically what that means is because Bitcoin is decentralized. There's no one that's actually in issuing it, and the mechanism of the actual system is balanced in such a way that it requires interested parties to interact with each other in order to support the network. Whereas a lot of stable coins at the moment, like USDT Tether and also USDC, they're owned by companies who are buying US bonds with any crypto that they've had in the past in order to support this digital token. And that is an important distinction. And I think, and it's important for people to bear that in mind because unfortunately, at the moment, where Bitcoin is in its development, even though it was originally designed as a form of currency, it's not quite there technically. I mean, there are a lot of people who are working on that, who want to develop it in that direction. But right now, the adoption is not big enough. Bitcoin is still in its early stages. It's not in a situation where it could take over as the world's reserve currency. And it's been designed in such a way that ultimately that is what would happen. As much as Michael Saylor's negotiations with the government may well slow down the adoption of Bitcoin and the way in which it can operate in the world, he can only influence the laws of the US. And anything that they do in the US in order to slow it down can easily be counteracted by what people do around the rest of the world because before everyone in the US was buying Bitcoin, it was being bought in China. I mean, I remember 2019 where they had a website where you could watch where most of the flow of Bitcoin was going, and it was all going to China before it started going to the US, and the US really, really got involved. And even now, the fraction of companies and banks and institutions and governments that have access to businesses, it's a tiny fraction compared to what is held by individuals around the world. So while on the face of it, what Michael Saylor is doing seems to be a problem for the whole of Bitcoin, most people are just focused on what's happening in the US without understanding Bitcoin from a larger perspective. And I think it's important to bear that in mind because maybe Michael Saylor is having to work with the institutions because, of course, they have the power to shut him down. But of course, if he's able to get government cooperation while it's at this stage, even as a form of digital gold, the nature of Bitcoin itself is that ultimately it would take over as a currency in spite of everything that Michael Saylor's trying to do, because the only power the US has over Bitcoin is to make a law. But ultimately, because of the way in which Bitcoin is structured, that will ultimately disrupt all of that. Once Bitcoin disrupts governments, it's going to disrupt the way in which it makes its laws. What it's most powerfully going to disrupt is the funding it has in order to enforce those laws. So, the long-term picture, if you watch how it's playing out, is much more positive. But of course, people get very upset and very focused on what's happening in the moment without recognizing, the limitations of the situation. And ultimately, Michael Saylor is doing the best he can in this situation to get government to even hold a conversation over Bitcoin. In many respects, he's being quite sneaky in that respect if you fully understand what Bitcoin does. And it's all a case of whether or not, the US federal agents are going to fall for it or not. So I suspect not. I suspect the longer they look at it, the more they are not going to be fooled by that. But obviously, this is the drama that's playing out at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see. So I felt the article, while I love the headline, I felt the article was a little bit um, it was missing some details of the big picture, really. I think what Michael Saylor and even Trump is necessarily doing in the moment, even though a lot of people get excited about that, it's not necessarily a reflection of the bigger picture.
It does seem like a lot of technology revolutions of the past, like radio and television and even internet now to some degree, with YouTube being very much less you now and very much more tube, is that I think that they're offering you Bitcoin without all the features. And they're going to say Bitcoin is this thing you can hold on an exchange. You can make money if it goes up. You can lose money if it goes down. But taking it off the exchange, holding it your own wallet, sending it around to your friends and family, even in other countries, paying people with it, that's just a little too far. That's a little too crazy. And we can't have you doing that. We can't have you setting up your own pirate radio stations, and we can't have you printing your own newspapers and pamphlets. That's just too much. And I think that that's what we're going to see with Bitcoin, is this continued idea that they can take it inside the house. They can take the Trojan horse inside the house. They can tame it. They can make a weaker version of it that'll still be palatable. You'll still be like, well, it's pretty good. We used to just have money in a bank, but now the bank, has to hold Bitcoin, and we don't really know how much Bitcoin they're holding or how they hold it. They don't provide reserves. There's not a lot of real change between this and the old way that the banking system used to work. But again, as we've said on this show, I think it's going to fail. I think that they're going to be unable to tame the beast. They're just going to advertise Bitcoin. They're going to tell people about its existence. And just like with these other technologies, you're going to want to go out there and get the real radio for yourself. You're going to want to have your own radio station. You want to have your own YouTube. You want to have your own blog and your own Twitter. And you want to have your own Bitcoin. And that's when you're going to realize, whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, Bitcoin is a thing that you can own. You can put it in your wallet at home. You can put it on a ledger or a Trezor. You can send it to your friend. You can pay someone with it. It's an amazing technology. And it's fascinating to see, as smart as this Michael Saylor is supposed to be, and he's basically supposed to be our new Andreas. We take all of our old Andreas cred and we move it over to the businessman guy who's borrowing endless amounts of money. He has the small strategy that makes him just so smart. But even he, I don't think, can really see the value of this Bitcoin revolution and what having control of the money does for the world, and leveling the playing field and removing parasitical interests and other people who control prices and make the thing go up and down and are entrenched in the bank, other things like this. It will all go, but it's just going to take longer. And we're going to go through this fantastic period where you can go around and collect the Bitcoin t-shirts from Wall Street. And you can get the Bank of America Bitcoin sachet bag and all these other kind of things. And that won't always be available. I believe this will be a brief period of friendship, followed by a long drawn out period of unhappiness, followed by, again, a period where the banks come back again and adopt Bitcoin. And they just have your balance is just denominated in Bitcoin, and you just send it around. A Bank of America is just another wallet compared with LN Bits and any other wallet solution or situation. But it's going to take a while and maybe a lot of creative destruction to get to that. There's a lot of ups and downs, but it's fun right now, right, Victoria? We're friends with Wall Street. We're friends with the government. And Michael Saylor's version of Bitcoin, it's a business utopian vision, right? Is what the businessmen could dream of.
Well, there are certainly advantages, and I think Michael Saylor's core business is a perfect fit for Bitcoin. I think, the moment he saw it. In fact, I even have a chapter in my book where I mentioned the fact that, the possibility of data harvesting, even if you don't know who the individuals are, just from analyzing the blockchain data, is a huge business opportunity. And of course, that's exactly what Michael Saylor's business does. So, it's not just the fact that he's interested in an inflation hedge. I think he's got a very clear plan for how Bitcoin fits in with his existing business. And if I were in his position, I'd probably be doing exactly what he's doing. I mean, I don't think it's Bitcoin's ultimate destiny, but I think Michael Saylor is a player in the game, and at this point in history, he has a very valuable role to play in terms of negotiating with government, because even just in the process of negotiation, even the fact that you're pushing back on a number of laws, because at the end of the article it talks about the fact that, they're in spite of all the criticisms, he is pushing back against a number of laws that the US is trying to introduce that would really stifle innovation in the blockchain space in order to try and keep some of those things free of regulation. So sometimes you don't always know how these things are going to play out. It's that classic story of, I don't know if people have heard it, the farmer who kind of goes, good news, bad news, who knows? Because you never know, how the story is really going to play out. Something that looks like good news today could be bad news tomorrow. Something that looks like bad news today could be good news tomorrow. Sometimes things have implications that you don't fully realize until everything's played out. But if you understand enough about how Bitcoin is designed and how it's set up, and not only that, but how the world as it currently stands is designed and how it's been set up, and if you understand the history, ultimately you've got an irresistible force going up against an immovable object, where the immovable object is slightly less immovable than the force is irresistible. And so what that means is, in the fullness of time, Bitcoin is destined to win. We're just commenting on the drama as it plays out. And Thomas is recording it for prosperity. So it's going to be fine, folks. Don't worry. It's just a blip.
It does almost seem like he's being set up. He's on the cover of Fortune magazine. He's the next big thing. And it's almost like he's just the next big SBF. His strategy is about as
Exactly.
complicated as Pirate at 40, who ran a Ponzi scheme years ago. I'll buy Bitcoin, I'll hold it for you. And that's the plan. That's my strategy. So it is interesting. We'll see how it turns out, if it's good or bad, but it is fascinating. It's hard to think of any scenario where a businessman goes on TV and says, I've discovered an infinite money glitch where everything turns out fine in the end of the story. I don't know exactly what the lightning bolt is, if it's someone from the inside stealing the money or not actually buying the money, or the price just goes down so much they kick him out as board of directors, or some kind of thing. But it just doesn't seem bad. It doesn't seem good. Who knows? You can't be on top forever. But we've got more stories in Bitcoin grab bag. We've got more stories. So just very quickly, to fight scams, Senate bill would limit transactions at crypto ATMs. The legislation proposed by Democrat Dick Durbin of Illinois, senator, comes as law enforcement agencies report more crypto scams targeting older adults. Well, I think about this one. Obviously, there are a lot of crypto scams, and it is very bad when people just put all of their money over and over into the machine. I just worry about the limits and limiting people's access to crypto as a market. If you're brand new to crypto and your only way to get access to it is to take your money to some machine and put it in the machine, and they limit your access, and you wanted to buy on Thursday and the price goes up on Monday and you can't buy till Thursday, it just doesn't seem fair to me. So some kind of reasonable cap, I think, would be good. It's interesting as well to think about for these operators of these convenience stores, who sometimes they think they get a percentage of these ATM sales. So they do want you to put money in. At the same time, I know a friend who operated a convenience store like this, and he said he would stop people if he thought they were being scammed, if they were blind, endlessly putting money in. So it's hard to find a line in between here. Obviously, the government is trying to protect people. We want less people, especially old age people, to be scammed by these crypto scams. Victoria Jones, what do you think about limits on crypto ATMs? I guess in the United Kingdom, they just threw them all out. No crypto ATMs. So maybe limits are better than none at all. Yeah.
Well, that would be a compromise, but the overriding thing that I observe just from reading this, or that occurs to me as I read this article, is that, we've all been so mollycoddled by the government. In the old days, before government got so big, people would learn from these stories and word would get around, and it would be like, don't do that because you'll lose all your money. But it's like, in these days, we can't rely on the fact that news spreads and you learn not to do something, because apparently the government needs to protect us. And what's even more ironic is that people are mainly being scammed by being told that they've been given a fine for not turning up for jury service, or they've got unpaid taxes, both of which are government agencies. So if the government didn't exist, there wouldn't be the potential to scam them in the first place. No doubt the scammers would find another way of doing it, but I don't know. I just think it's another case of government overreach. And you're right, responsible people. I mean, I know the friend that you're talking about, and I've heard those stories too. He'd watch people who'd come in and be filling the crypto ATM in a panic. And often that would be a prompt for him to go over and have a conversation. And obviously, if the rest of the world were as considerate, hopefully we wouldn't get to this situation. But of course, there are people who are motivated for the wrong reasons by greed or whatever, who aren't interested in helping or protecting people. That kind of protection should be something that happens on the ground, really. So I don't know. I think it's another opportunity for government to get involved where really they shouldn't be involved at all. But of course, it's the nature of the world that we live in right now that is what is occurring.
It is fascinating. As our friend told us, sometimes he would tell them about the scam and they wouldn't believe him. He'd have to unplug the ATM. The people were so dedicated to paying the scammers. So, yeah, something has to be done. I don't know what it's going to be. As I said, he's a Democrat, which unfortunately in today's day and age means your bill will not be passed. So it was fun talking about it. Let's keep moving. As Steve Patterson says, the biggest banks in the world are very happy with Bitcoin as a store of value and not a medium of exchange. The hijacking of Bitcoin has given them enough time to launch their own stablecoins to compete in the digital cash market. Not only did Bitcoin not kill the banks, it could, he says will, give them, the biggest banks, the opportunity to become their own money printers. Brilliant. And as we said before, stablecoins, not Bitcoin, were in focus at the first U.S. Digital Asset Subcommittee hearing. Senators and key figures, all things stablecoins at the first hearing. Bitcoin lightly mentioned, if at all. So yes, I do agree with the author. I think that the stablecoins are a way for the banks to get a backdoor into Bitcoin and to present a competing product and to say, hey, it's the same thing. It's the same as Bitcoin. It's just Bank of America Bitcoin. And yeah, it doesn't go up and down anymore, but don't focus so much on the ups. Focus on the down. It's not going to go down. You're not going to lose all your money. And you can still send it around and pretend it's a digital currency and send it to your people and your friends, but it's totally traceable. It's totally reversible. It can't be used to support rebel movements or whatever you want to send it to. You don't get a choice on what you're spending it on. And as far as them taking over the committee hearing, I'm not surprised at all. This whole time with the Bitcoiners heading for the top of the ticket and aiming to bribe Trump and get all of these spoils. I've said that the opposite would have been a better plan, starting from the bottom, getting a few representatives who actually believed in Bitcoin, who could get some bills forward, get some riders. That's in the old system when we used to have bills and things anyway. Who knows how things work now? But Victoria, what do you think? Did they get a good deal? All the Bitcoiners who donated to Trump, they had them at their convention, they had them at the Libertarian convention, and now stable coins at the hearing.
Yeah, I can't say I'm terribly surprised. Obviously, it was in Trump's interest to flatter the Bitcoiners because he knows that they have a lot of money, but it's not in the interests of any country to adopt Bitcoin as a currency. The only reason why El Salvador is doing it is because they're so far at the bottom of the pile that it can't really hurt them any further, not following through. They have so little advantage by operating a fiat currency. It was an opportunity for them. But, when you take that position and compare it with the United States, it's incomparable. At the moment, the United States runs the world reserve currency. Why would they do anything to undermine that position? I think Thomas, you've commented on a few shows before that it's absolute madness for the US to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So, if you understand Bitcoin, again, you understand history, you understand the background, they're not going to they're not going to adopt Bitcoin as the currency, not voluntarily. I think it will probably end up becoming that, but it's going to be a long journey, and it'll be filled with drama along the way. But yeah, the US government, there's no way they're going to adopt Bitcoin as a currency. You can forget that. And even the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, I think, is a bit of a stretch. So, but we'll see what happens.
I think when they write about this later, they'll kind of joke about it and they'll say, well, the Bitcoin business leaders and the other well off, they thought they could go in the front door and they thought they could bribe the politicians just like any other project and say, hey, consider us. We're just like the startups. We're like Facebook. We're just another tech company here to, take your money and give you a service. But the reality is that this service is forever seditious. It undermines your currency. And whatever Saylor wants to say in all of this, it is a competitor with the dollar. And that's why I think when we're supposed to have our Bitcoin committee hearing, we have a stablecoin committee hearing. It's going to be scarier for people if they have a CDBC or a CBDC committee hearing and they start talking about the central bank digital currencies, or the US government gets back involved with that, because we've all seen before, despite the amnesia of these Bitcoiners, Trump's promises aren't worth anything. So if he says no CBDCs for life and you've got it on a piece of paper and you got it signed at the Bitcoin convention, you may as well frame it. It has as much value as that. You can sell it on eBay. You don't know what's going to happen with these people in the future, and it's not over yet. But I do think they'll say, yeah, the naive Bitcoiners walked in the front door expecting everyone to negotiate with them with their really weird product, with all of its really weird, old deep connections and the way it's mined and all these kind of things. Like, everyone will just think it's fun. They'd much prefer a stablecoin presented by Bank of America to your big. We've got breaking news. The SEC has just halted its fraud prosecution of Justin Sun, a Chinese national who has put more than $50 million into Trump's pocket since November through his purchase of crypto tokens from a Trump-backed company, World Liberty Financial. Justin Sun, creator of Tron, or something to do with Tron and some other exchange, a big crypto player, has been freed. He's free. Victoria, what do you think? We talked about this before with the Ross Ulbricht. It does seem like pay to play, that you can pay a politician, get your guy out of jail. Previously, it was our guy, Ross. Now it's somebody else's guy, Justin, the buyer of the banana, the famous guy from Tron. What do you think? More pay to play action here?
Yeah, I mean, if you read the actual tweet and the little bit of the document that you can see, I mean, basically, they've agreed to suspend the prosecution in lieu of another negotiation. So basically, whatever friendship he's made has bought him some time and a different way to negotiate what's going on, rather than going through the courts. And actually, this isn't an unusual thing. Often with financial crimes, if there's no other crimes involved, this is often how they get settled. So it's not that surprising, at the end of the day. I mean, most of the way America works politically is to do with who can give you the biggest donation, because the donations are what gets the president in office in the first place. And I think Trump's just a very savvy politician, understanding how that's worked. It's very much a case of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And it's unfortunate that that's the way in which the system works. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's honorable. It's one of the reasons why I support Bitcoin, because I think it's an opportunity to disrupt all of that. And 50 million sounds like a lot, but I mean, I did a search just before we came on the show, just to kind of get an idea of how much Justin Sun is supposed to be worth. And apparently his net worth is estimated to be around 5 billion. And on that basis, giving Trump something like 75 million is equivalent to having 1,000 quid and giving him 15 quid. So, in terms of Justin's net worth, the donations to Trump are minuscule, really. And this is the advantage of being a billionaire. You can afford to influence those decisions, unlike the rest of us mere mortals who believe that our votes are worth something. But this is what we're up against.
It reminds me a lot of the CZ Binance situation, where everyone thought he was going to get lots of trouble and his company had gone all over the place, even fleeing countries after the country said they were going to change the tax regulations, almost as if they were more of a band of pirates than a company. But I don't think anything ever happened to them. I'm pretty sure they let CZ go with some light, minor punishment, like you say, massive fines to us mere mortals, nothing to them. And I think we've seen again, it's just very strange. Sometimes when you build a business, you can wreck and plunder and do whatever you want. But when you or I do it or someone else does it, they get caught and they get wrecked. But then there's sometimes these magical businesses just skate under the radar and get away with everything. And I think that's another one here with Justin Sun, just breaking the right laws, breaking the right things in the right way. And it turns out fine for you. We've got one more short story, as I said, with the possibility of a retreat and a bounce here. Andrew at AP_abacus writes, he says, reiterating Bitcoin 250,000 by Q4 2025, book market. And he says Bitcoin's push to 84,000 is directly related to the BlackRock Bybit being added to its model portfolios. Larry Fink's hands are stronger than crypto Twitter. Don't fade the Fink. And Victoria, what do you think of the chance that this could be a retreat and bounce situation? We still have the supply shock of the halvening. People are still out there looking for it. What do you think? Q4, is this all erased? Everything's fine?
No, I don't think so at all. I think by Q4 2025, Bitcoin is going to be dipping again, because that's often the way in which the cycle plays out, based on the way in which the software works. Obviously, I think that's tampered with now because of the ETFs, but either way, I think by the end of 2025, I don't believe. I think Bitcoin's going to be on a downward trajectory. And also, like I said earlier, the amount of, even though these big institutions are buying Bitcoin hand over fist, the proportion of Bitcoin they've got access to is just tiny. So the idea that they're about to take over the world or take over Bitcoin is frankly ridiculous. I think they're taking part in the game, but at this stage, it's going to be because they're trading it like everyone else does. I mean, that's how they manage the world's finances, through trading. So, I don't hold out much hope with that argument, I'm afraid.
Well, there's still a possibility based upon the supply and based upon things that have come before. Although people have missed the top before, other people said that there'd be a second top and there never was. And people have missed the bottom before, saying it would go far lower than they thought it would. In general, no one's that's ever held Bitcoin for more than 5 years has lost money. So you can just hold on and see how it goes. Of course, you got to pay your bills and stuff, so you got to sell sometimes. Victoria Jones, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? We're running out of time.
Well, my story of the week, in tune with some of the topics that we've been discussing today, is my next newsletter is due out on Sunday. The last one I had up was called Bitcoin as a Currency. So you've probably got about just over 24 hours to catch that and have a look at it before it goes behind a paywall, as the next newsletter is released this Sunday. And the next newsletter is going to be Bitcoin and the Welfare State, where I analyze, how the new Labour Chancellor is managing the country's finances, and I outline how it's a high-risk gamble that's likely to be tricky, and how Bitcoin could help solve those problems. So if you're interested in that, check out my website, satoshispage.com.
Very cool. Everyone should check that out, satoshispage.com. And on my story of the week, I was looking at some old tweets or old images, and I found this 10 years ago in February of 2015. I got my first Bitcoin job. As it says here on CoinDesk, Bitcoin startup BTC Jam taps Bitcoin blogger Mad Bitcoins as community manager. So it's very cool to think back 10 years ago. I got to try out startups in San Francisco and sleep on the couch at work and work all the time and order lunches, all the fun things you get to do at a startup. Unfortunately, we didn't get very far at BTC Jam, so we didn't get very many t-shirts or other fun things that we would have liked to done for marketing and other stuff like that. But it was exciting to be in San Francisco And it's hard to believe that it's been 10 years already since I was at BTC Jam working on the Bitcoin loans. That was a backed company, I think $10 million or something. It was a big company. Now $10 million is nothing. It's an altcoin or a fart coin or something like that. So shout out to BTC Jam and any of the people that used to be there with me. It was a long time ago. And we also want to say, as many have said, fond farewell to Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman, famous actor, passed away over the weekend. He, as it says, he was the star of every scene he was in. And you don't think about it that much, but the more you go back and think about good movies you've seen, Gene Hackman's in a lot of those movies. He's supporting the movie. He's the star of the movie. He's always there. Something like Royal Tenenbaums or The French Connection or so many more. The conversation was so good. And we might lose our ad revenue, but hopefully we can do this for illustrative purposes. This is the scene from Heist that I quote all the time, where Gene Hackman says that he's smart.
Where'd you get that? Here you go, Mr. French.
You fixed it.
Nah, I had to make a new one.
Oh, you're a pretty smart fella.
Nah, not that smart.
You're not that smart. How'd you figure it out?
I tried to imagine a fellow smarter than myself. And then I tried to think, what would he do?
I tried to imagine a fella smarter than myself, and then I think, what did he do? Gene Hackman, Victoria, anything you'd like to add on these stories here at the end of the show?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm very familiar with watching films and a very recognizable face. So yeah, very sad news. It's always sad, when these famous names pass away. It makes us reminds us all of our own mortality. And of course, the more people we remember who look young passing away just reminds us that we're getting ever closer to that day for ourselves. Happy days. It's a joyful thought to end on.
Well, it's a strange thing. I've thought about this a lot. When you're growing up, you get into all these movies and all these shows and musicians and whatever you're into. You don't quite realize that you're also growing old with them. And that just as like the baseball players are only baseball players for a little bit of time, the rock stars have their period, they're all going to move on and they're all going to end up at this Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary in the audience. And if you guys watch that on any of the ones where you can see the crowd there and you pause it, it's everybody we've watched for the last 50 years and they've all got gray hair and they're all melting and there's nothing that can stop it. And it's there for all of us. Whether you're an old guy like Gene Hackman or David Lynch, or a young woman like Michelle Trachtenberg from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I liked her in the movie Euro Trip, but she just passed away at 39. So it's very strange, and there's also kind of a magic to this film technology that we forget about all the time, especially now that we have iPhones and instant cameras and things, that the person stays young forever on film. The performance is all there. It's always there forever. I'll always watch Gene Hackman, always exactly the same in all these scenes. But in reality, just like the portrait of Dorian Gray or anything else, the person does age, time does go on for the actors, the directors, the writers, everybody on both sides of the camera. So it is interesting and it is unavoidable part of life. So to Gene Hackman, dedicated, and to the horrible crash of the Bitcoin and crypto markets, we dedicate this show. So thanks so much to Victoria for joining us. Everybody give us a thumbs up down below, push subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, bye.